Good afternoon, everyone. Joe Davis from Southern New Hampshire University. We're talking about Justice 224 and the actual discussion board rubric. Applies to all of the discussions. Hope you can all get a good look. At the end of this little brief presentation, I'll walk you through this week one's first discussion board question. But I think you need to spend a couple moments, hopefully, if you haven't already, to take a look at what's required for this assignment. And think of the discussion board not as something you have to fill out by 11:58 on Sunday night. Think of it as if we were all in the traditional classroom and someone says something about the issue and says, well, I'm not sure how a law gets passed here in the United States. And someone else says, well, the way it works is that people get together in a back room, and then a third person says, no, that's not right. We have members of Congress that introduce legislation. So it's actually should be a discussion. Hence, when we look over here on the left-hand side, it talks about things like your initial post, your very first post, should be 1 or 2 paragraphs. That's fairly substantial. And in Module 1, complete that initial post by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. your time zone. This particular rubric says Eastern time, but it has been changed to whatever your time zone is. Okay, and then for modules 2 through 7, Thursday still applies. In Module 8, and we'll get to that in 2 months, it moves to Saturday. But suffice to say, by Thursday night of this week, you have to post a substantive answer to the prompt, to the question. Okay, and then over here on the other side, you have to reply to 2 additional students. Now, I'll reply to some of your posts. You'll post something and I'll write something back to you, and you may answer me. That doesn't count as responding to a classmate. Okay, so you need to respond to a minimum of 2 other classmates. That has to be completed by Sunday night at 11:59, and in week 8 you have until Tuesday. So now those are the nuts and bolts of when the assignment is due. Let's come down here and look at the critical elements that are involved and what you need to include in your answer to get the maximum points. And we're going to look at the exemplary grade. There's no reason to look at the others. Let's look at shoot for the A, do the best you can. And it says comprehension develops an initial post with an organized, clear point of view or idea using rich and significant. So that means you've read the material that's in the textbook. You've read the material that's in the Blackboard shell. In this case, the overview, you've hit the link on how does an idea become a law in the United States. So you're going to use that kind of language. Next we come to timeliness. The key here is that if all you do is post it on time, that means by Thursday night at 11:59, your initial post, you get the maximum number of points. If you submit it 2 days late, so if it's due on Thursday and you don't post until Sunday, you lose all of those points. You lose half of them if you post 1 day late. So timeliness just gets you easy points, if you will. Next is engagement. This has to do with your reply to your fellow students, provides relevant and meaningful response posts with clarifying explanation and detail. So that means that if you just post, hey, great job, I agree with you, you brought up a lot of good points, that would take you down to where you're at the other end, and it says there really isn't any substantive, meaningful, clarifying comments. Okay, and then finally the writing mechanics, where it says write posts that are easily understood, excuse me, that are clear of grammatical errors, they have proper APA format citations. One of the things I've noticed more and more prevalently is that it appears to me students are trying to text these answers. That's all well and good, but you still must write in a complete sentence. You must have capitalization. You must have punctuation. Um, all of the product grading, if you will, is the same. And so I would just encourage you to keep that in mind. If that's the way that it works out best for you to do these assignments, okay, but I'm going to read them based on this rubric. Okay, let's take a look at the actual 1-1, the first week one's question, discussion question. You review the assigned section in how our laws are made. That means you have to go to the reading resources that are available in the Blackboard shell. You have to click on the link and you have to read this article. And I say you have to because that's where the outline is of how to answer the prompt. It tells you about the two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate in the United States Congress, how a bill becomes a law. To become it has to make its way through Congress. It has to go through both houses. This can be very volatile because if a Democrat proposes legislations that Republicans oppose, or vice versa, the volatility doesn't mean anger. It just means discussion, and so those two parties will debate it. They'll take it to subcommittees. There are all kinds of steps, and that's why you need to review this process. Okay, so in your initial post you need to explain that process. You need to talk about how it's an idea and a congressman, congresswoman, senator, member of the House introduces this bill and how it gets assigned to a subcommittee, and there are hearings, and then finally it comes before all of the House of Representatives or all of the Senate for a vote, and then it's sent to the other house where that process repeats. Okay, that's nuts and bolts. The next bullet here talks about, do you think this process serves to create better law? This is your analysis, your critical thinking skills. And to just say yeah, it does, no. Do you think the process does? Explain your response and provide examples. And so what you may want to talk about is that it allows for public input. It allows for special interest input. Everybody, or I shouldn't say everybody, frequently people are upset by the idea that special interests. I would offer that virtually everyone in the United States is represented by some type of special interest. And if you were going to defend that position, which this is what you would be looking at, who else would know more about the technical part of whatever this issue is? Or they could be nonprofit groups that are a special interest. So it's a chance for input and a chance for debate and a chance for compromise. Those are the reasons why it creates better laws. Now, if you don't agree with any of that, those are the things that you would write about, and you would say, well, the problem is too many people have input and we end up with compromise legislation. Okay, and then you come up with an example. Then the last part, 3 parts to this one is that in response to your peers you have to discuss whether you believe there is a disconnect between our representative form of government when it comes to creating laws. And so we have seen in the presidential election of 2016 with President Trump being elected that he did not win the popular vote. More than 2 million people, voters, did not vote for him. They voted for Hillary Clinton. But he won in the Electoral College, which is our system, which made him President of the United States. The bottom line is there is a huge divide in the electorate over that election. Okay, so whichever side of the fence you're on, you might very well say, well, Mr. Trump finally represents us. We weren't represented. We weren't getting things that are best for us. That may very well be. The other argument would work the other way, that the Democrats were getting everything they wanted or they weren't represented. I hope this helps. Let me know if you have questions. Keep the cards and letters coming.